She endured 2 assaults, leaving a letter that led my brother to disown his daughter. I raised her, but now he demands her house. To begin with, my sister-in-law, Zara, was a very kind and generous person. She always greeted me with love and made me feel like I was a sister from the first time I met her. We had grown really close over the years because we were both working women, and we would spend our weekends shopping or going to lunch together. Zara was always incredibly fit and took excellent care of her health. This is why the sad news of her breast cancer diagnosis shocked us all so deeply. We united behind her and supported her fight against cancer. I made it a point to visit her frequently during her chemotherapy rounds to spend time with her and watch over my infant niece whenever possible. During one of my visits to her home, while we sat together in her living room, she told me some news that broke my heart. Her voice trembled as she stated that her physicians had delivered a devastating diagnosis. Her cancer was severe and resistant to therapy. They had given her a prognosis that left little room for optimism. The weight of her comments weighed heavily in the air, and I fought to find the perfect words to console her. During that vulnerable moment, I asked her what I could do to make everything easy for her. Her eyes, which were typically filled with love and joy, suddenly showed a mixture of fear and resignation. She thanked me for everything I had done for her and expressed her desire not to burden me with a secret she had kept concealed from everyone. I strongly stated that she had nothing to apologize for and that I would do anything for her, no questions asked. She then entrusted me with a secret she had never told anyone, including her own parents. She told me that years ago, during her undergraduate days, she went through a horrible experience that had haunted her ever since. She was the victim of a sexual attack at a party where she had been drinking too much. The attacker wore a mask, making it impossible for her to recognize him. The horror of that night left severe scars that she had been carrying silently for years. As she described the events of that fatal evening, I listened in terror. She was then in a relationship with my brother. Naturally, she looked to him for help and consolation, expecting that he would be the one person in the world who understood her. Instead of finding relief in his embrace, she was confronted with astonishment and accusations. My brother couldn't understand how another man could violate her in this way. In disbelief, he began to question her actions, indicating that perhaps her clothes or demeanor toward the guy at the party had prompted the assault. He refused to think that a man could accomplish such a thing unless the lady gave him a signal. Zara was heartbroken that he was questioning her in this manner. The weight of shame and guilt, wrongfully imposed on her by someone she loved, exacerbated her pain. Despite this, she summoned the bravery to denounce the assault to the police and even underwent a medical examination, which confirmed her claim about the assault. She wanted the culprit punished. Unfortunately for Zara, she lived in a college neighborhood where parties were prevalent and thousands of students congregated under the cover of night. Despite their best efforts, the authorities were unable to identify the masked assailant. It didn't help that none of the guests at the party came forward to testify for her. As a result, the inquiry stalled, and Zara never received justice. At the time, her parents were still living and were the only ones who believed in her. This is how she overcame her great humiliation for what had occurred to her. According to Zara, after months of discussing the incident with my brother, he finally came around and apologized for his initial reaction. He realized that he should have known better and pledged to be more supportive of her going forward. Despite the strain on their relationship, Zara did not want to break it with him, so she chose to forgive him. Despite my brother's best efforts to be there for her in the years that followed, the tragedy never left her mind. I was saddened to hear this, especially since my brother had never mentioned any of it to me. Zara pointed out that my brother disliked discussing it, and had even told her to keep the occurrence a secret, as if it were something disgusting for others to discover. I gently gripped Zara's hand and assured her that I didn't blame her for anything that had happened to her, because it was never her fault. Zara smiled back bitterly and told me she had more to say. She talked slowly, as if each word was both a confession and a request for understanding. She then disclosed that she had been sexually attacked again after the initial event, this time by her former employer from her prior position. I remembered how, 2 or 3 years ago, she unexpectedly left her work despite the fact that she had always enjoyed it. Zara had never told me why until now. Her hands trembled as she described how terrified and helpless she felt during the second assault. She informed me she was numb from shock during the event and could only move after the assault finished. Tears flowed down her cheeks as she departed the scene in a daze, her entire body trembling with the weight of what had just occurred. She recounted feeling detached from everything, as if she were witnessing the trauma from outside her own body. Later, as she sat in her car crying, her first thoughts drifted to my brother. She knew, based on his earlier reaction, that he would likely blame her again. She described how she felt the same shame when she realized she had been abused by another man without her consent. She felt unclean and repulsed by herself. This time, the trauma had a greater impact on her mental health since, unlike previously, she had no one to talk to. Her parents had died, and she was afraid to open up to my brother. As a result, she fell into melancholy and experienced a few panic attacks. Zara told me she debated whether to report the assault to the police and have her boss arrested or to safeguard her marriage. Then, 3 weeks later, she learned she was pregnant. At that point, she was positive that the child was not my brother's. The weight of this realization devastated her even more, and she was unsure how to convey the news to my brother. She assumed he would ask for a divorce. As her mental health deteriorated, Zara decided to end her life. She told me how powerless she felt at the time, lacking the strength to end the pregnancy and not wanting others to know about the assaults. I listened to her story, holding back tears, unable to understand what she had been through silently without any of us knowing. Zara went on to tell me how the evening she decided to end her life with sleeping pills, everything changed. My brother unexpectedly discovered the positive pregnancy test in the restroom. Instead of waiting for an explanation, he began bouncing up and down, overjoyed that she was pregnant and that they could finally start a family together. Caught up in his joy and engulfed in his embrace, she found herself unable to bring him down with the truth. Later, she told me how humiliated she was for not having the strength to tell him the truth that day or over the course of the previous 2 years that the child was not his. Zara informed me that every time she saw the delicate moments between her daughter and my brother, her heart broke again. Tears flowed down her cheeks as she apologized to me for lying to my brother and everyone else. She even referred to herself as a coward and a loser who did not deserve a family as great as ours. She believed that cancer was God's punishment for her falsehoods. She informed me she intended to disclose everything to my brother before she died. However, she asked me to make her a pledge. It turns out she wanted me to look after her daughter while she was gone. She pleaded with me with her hands, since she had no family members left. Both her parents and grandparents had passed away. If my brother refused to accept the child after learning the truth, I was her only hope of caring for her daughter. I was quite shaken after hearing everything and needed some time to comprehend it all. As a woman myself, I felt profound sympathy for everything she had been through. I knew she was telling me the whole truth because she was dying and needed to get it off her chest. Of course, I realized that she had lied to my brother for so long about being the baby's father, but she was also visibly sorry. At this moment, all I could do was reassure her that if necessary, I would raise my niece on my own. She exhaled a sigh of relief as I fulfilled my promise to her. I continued to see Zara over the weeks as her illness advanced, holding out hope for her survival even as the reality of her condition became more apparent. She remained as courageous as possible throughout. Finally, she went away peacefully in her sleep. Her absence has created a void, yet her spirit continues to motivate me to live with compassion and gratitude. She showed me that even in the worst times, there can be grace and beauty if we have the strength to perceive it. She was more than just a sister-in-law to me. She was a friend and sincere confidant. After she died, my brother shared with me the contents of a letter written by my sister-in-law, which revealed the awful reality she had previously confided in me. He was heartbroken to realize that the child he had embraced with such delight was not biologically his. His anguish and rage were obvious as he dealt with this new reality, which was exacerbated by the recent death of his wife. In his grief, he couldn't bring himself to hold the infant anymore. Instead, he told our parents and me that he was going to give her up. I firmly told him that Zara had asked me to look after my niece and that I wanted to take care of her, even if he no longer wanted her. This is how I welcomed my niece into my home without hesitation. I was really heartbroken for her because she had just lost her mother, and with no other family left, her parents and grandparents having passed away, I knew she needed a stable and supportive atmosphere at the moment. Later, When we gathered for the reading of my sister-in-law's will, everyone was already emotional because they knew my niece did not belong to my brother. Many of my family members were divided over this news. However, Zara was no longer with us to face their fury. According to her will, she made specific and careful plans for her daughter's future, leaving every asset and resource she had amassed over the years for her daughter's benefit. Zara had a large fortune from both her parents and grandparents, so she had a lot of money to leave behind. To my brother's sorrow, nothing was allocated to him, exacerbating his pain and sense of betrayal. He yelled loudly that it was wrong of her not to leave anything in her will for him. Zara had specifically stated that she had committed the management of these monies to me, provided I was willing to take on the responsibility of caring for her kid. This news surprised both me and everyone else present. I suppose this is why Zara wanted me to make that pledge to her weeks before she died, so she could update her will accordingly. She was correct to believe her intuition and not allow my brother access to her assets, since if that had been the case, he would never have let my niece have anything and would have abandoned her without money. My brother was unwilling to continue caring for the child. Therefore, I was eventually granted full custody of my niece. I've been able to care for her all these years because of the financial support I received. My brother attempted to battle me over the money Zara had left behind, believing he was entitled to at least half of it. However, the judge did not listen to him. In rage, my brother told me that he didn't want anything to do with Zara's daughter and that he never wanted to see my face again, saying that I had betrayed him by taking in the girl. I firmly told him that I was sorry for all of his sorrow, but I was not going to break my promise to Zara. My sister-in-law's decision to keep the facts from my brother was wrong, and I acknowledged that. However, now that she is no longer with us, I am convinced that the child is not to blame for her parents' conduct. This is why I've always focused only on establishing a caring and secure home for my niece, sheltering her from the intricacies of the past. Over the years, I've used the funds Zara left behind to ensure that my niece has everything she needs. I've also purchased a home for her, which my niece will entirely inherit once she reaches adulthood, according to Zara's desires. I've made every effort to send her to great schools and care for her, as if she were my own daughter. I am not married and have dedicated my entire life to raising my niece. Despite my best attempts, my niece understandably has concerns about her parents, especially her father. She misses my brother, but she understands that relationships cannot be forced in these circumstances. My decision to prioritize my niece's well-being has affected my ties with my other family members. They have all chosen to cut ties with me and no longer invite me to family gatherings, claiming that my actions are foolish and that I have prioritized my niece over my own kin. Even my parents believe I should have given up my niece and have often expressed their disappointment that I am raising someone else's child. As you might expect, the past several years have been a challenging journey in which I've had to negotiate the chasm between what I believe is right and the ramifications of those decisions on my family connections. This year, as my niece approaches her 18th birthday, I feel a sense of accomplishment as I prepare to transfer all of her assets, including the property I've acquired for her. It's a significant achievement for which I've worked hard. I feel like I've done everything I could to protect her up until now, and she's ready to make her own decisions. My brother contacted me unexpectedly last week, saying he needed to discuss something very serious. My heart skipped a beat. I hoped he'd realized his mistake and wanted to reconnect with me and my niece after all these years. I agreed to meet with him, but I didn't want my niece to find out and get her hopes up until I knew why he was visiting, so I planned for us to meet when she was at school. When my brother came, there was a sense of expectation and warmth as we made small chat. He told me he has since remarried, and I was pleasantly surprised to learn that he now has 2 children of his own. He showed me images of them, and his boys looked exactly like him. I was disappointed that he hadn't invited me to his wedding, but I understood that he did what he had to do after Zara had deceived him. During our talk, I couldn't help but feel proud as I highlighted my niece's accomplishments and improvement over the years. I informed my brother that she occasionally inquired about him and was fairly mature for her age, thinking he would say he wanted to see her. Despite my excitement to communicate these wonderful tidings, he appeared indifferent to my niece. He interrupted me, his tone immediately changing to one of seriousness. He explained that he had come to meet me not to discuss my niece, but to request ownership of her house. I stared at him wide-eyed as he told how his family had suddenly lost their home and that our parents had already loaned him a large sum of money over the years, so he could no longer ask for assistance. Since he knew I had purchased the house with Zara's money, he believed it was only fair for me and my niece to let him keep the house to accommodate his large family while we relocated to a smaller space. I questioned him why he thought he could even pose such a question. My brother went on to defend it by claiming that he had previously done a lot for Zara, but she had turned out to be nothing more than a leech. I knew this wasn't true because Zara had always worked and paid her portion of the bills, including throughout her chemotherapy treatments. She covered her own medical expenses and had health insurance. I brought this out to my brother, telling him that it was ridiculous for him to expect a house when he hadn't even bothered raising my niece after Zara died. This simply made him angrier. He told me that as his sister, I should stop holding a candle for a deceased woman and instead assist him and his family in securing the house before my niece turned 18. He persuaded me to view things his way, saying that the house was his legitimate possession. The weight of his words hung in the air as I considered his request. I couldn't help but consider the ramifications of such a decision. The property was more than simply a physical asset. It symbolized security and stability, which had been meticulously planned for my niece's future. To give it up, no matter how badly my brother needed it, would mean breaking commitments and risking the stability I had fought so hard to establish. My niece's well-being and future were paramount, and any decision involving her assets had to be made with her best interests in mind, no matter how difficult or emotional the situation. In that moment, I grasped the gravity of the situation and the need to stick to my beliefs. I informed him unequivocally that I could not support his request, and that he should take responsibility for his own family rather than relying on his deceased wife's possessions. I continued to tell him how ashamed I was that he even considered this option and how he had given up all rights when he handed over custody of his daughter to me following Zara's death. My brother's face flushed red with rage at my statement, but I continued before he could interject again. I voiced my disappointment that he had not been present for my niece during all of these years. I didn't hesitate to remind him that while I realized Zara had betrayed him, he should also see that she had been the victim of countless traumas. It was unjust of him to put the blame onto her now, especially because he had not supported her after her first sexual assault. When I revealed the assault, his eyes widened in amazement, and he demanded to know how I knew about it, as no one else knew the truth. This is when I told him that Zara had confided in me and entrusted me with the task of caring for my niece before she died. When my brother heard this, he became accusatory, alleging I had surprised him and labeling me a liar just like Zara. I shook my head, reminding him that Zara was terminally ill and had already endured enough. After all the years of him not taking responsibility for my niece while I had done everything I could to assist her, he had no right to bring up the past and complain now simply because he wanted Zara's money. I was weary of him constantly behaving like a victim. It was disheartening to see him shift blame and claim entitlement when he had not been financially supportive of my niece for years. His boldness in coming 16 years later and requesting ownership of her house felt like a slap in the face, ignoring all of my sacrifices and attempts to assure my niece's well-being and future security. My brother was unhappy because I refused to give in to his demands. Since our meeting, he and my parents have called me often, accusing me of being difficult for no reason and insisting that I have family devotion to them rather than my niece. It's demoralizing and terrifying to discover that when it comes to money, even your own blood relatives can devolve into something unknown. I continue to stand up for my niece and refuse to give in to my brother's unreasonable demands. Update 1. First and foremost, I am astounded by how kind everyone has been in my DMs and comments. Thank you for making me grin. Second, I can't tell you how many women have contacted me, giving their own stories and saying how closely they connect to what Zara went through. I wish I could give every one of you a great tight embrace and relieve your anguish. Sexual assault is one of the most horrible things that can happen to a woman, and I wish someone could have helped Zara at the time. She wasn't a bad person, and she didn't deserve what she went through. It's unfortunate that I have to defend her, but just because you haven't suffered sexual assault doesn't imply others don't. Zara had demonstrated amazing courage following the first assault, but the second occurrence left her shaken, rightly so. She was immobilized in fear, as many sexual assault victims are. I wish she had felt comfortable enough to open up to me sooner, because I would have been there for her in every way. Knowing what she went through crushes my heart, and I wish I could have been there for her during those difficult days. To those who label Zara a cheater and question her narrative, I really pray you never go through such anguish only to have your truth challenged. If Zara had really had an affair, she might have instructed me to contact the man for custody after she died. Furthermore, if there had been an affair, the man would not have remained silent all these years. He would have most certainly come up, especially given how much money Zara left behind for her kid. If she had an affair, I'm sure she would have wanted her daughter to know her biological father. Zara did everything possible to safeguard her daughter. Update 2. I sat down with my niece and told her that my brother had lately been to speak with me and his main goal was to gain control of the house. I advised her to be cautious if he ever approached her. As I talked, I could see the rage and pain in her eyes. She had hoped for years that her father would reach out to her because he actually cared. However, when she discovered that his contact was motivated by his own wants, she felt deceived. "I can't believe him," she informed me, her voice shaking from emotion. After all this time, he only reached out when he needed something. She informed me that she did not want anything to do with him and expressed her gratitude that her mother had not left him anything. She then hugged me and expressed her gratitude for everything I'd done for her over the years. Her statements were simultaneously painful and empowering to hear. It brought tears to my eyes as I understood that despite the sorrow of her father's acts, she was strong and determined to carry on without him. Update 3. After speaking with my niece, I decided to send a lengthy email to my parents and brother to document everything and state my position clearly. In the email, I described our previous interactions and highlighted that they had no right to ask me to hand over my niece's home to my brother. I stressed that this request constituted financial fraud and stated unequivocally that I would take legal action if my brother attempted to see me or my niece again to request the house for his family. I informed my brother that by choosing not to care for his kid, he surrendered all rights. I also discussed the numerous difficulties and frustrations I had encountered while raising my niece on my own with no prior experience. I highlighted the emotional, financial, and logistical hurdles I had faced in providing her with a secure and caring home. I also informed him that he had never paid child support or checked in on his daughter in all these years. I pointed out that he and my parents should feel nothing but guilt for attempting to take something that did not belong to them. I insisted that they had no right to suddenly intervene and make demands after all this time, especially because they had contributed nothing to her upbringing or well-being. The email was detailed and sincere, reflecting the sacrifices I had made for my niece. I reaffirmed my resolve to protect her and honor Zara's wishes, no matter what. My message was clear and unequivocal. They had forfeited their right to be a part of her life due to their negligence and lack of support, and they had no place in her future. I never received a response after submitting the email. However, my brother and parents have not contacted me again, which is satisfactory for me. The silence speaks volumes, and I'm happy to have some peace knowing they won't meddle with my niece's life anymore. My niece is now preparing for her prom and impending birthday celebration. Watching her manage these thrilling occasions makes me very proud. I am so proud of the woman she has become, and I can't wait to support her at every big milestone in her future. It makes me emotional just thinking about how much she has grown and how much she resembles Zara, especially in her lips and brows. Every day, I see Zara's strength and tenacity in my niece, and I only hope that she will be as strong as her mother, no matter what she does. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.